Some states legislate, updated plans that vision processes can help inform. And other communities are just smart. If you do something with resident input, it's brilliant to ask residents what they want because it just gets them bought in. It gets them feeling like my voice matters. It carries. The community is going to do something with what I tell them, and then that just becomes a really strong, dynamic civic thread.
So I'm not as familiar with the details of Vision 2025 or who's involved, but that would be an example of a space or an intention around kind of bringing an urban regime together to solve problems. And then the question is, with any of these efforts, is are people invested enough? Is there strong enough leadership to keep people focused? Are there incentives for people to want to stay in the game? What's in it for me and what's in it for other folks around the table? There has to be trust developed in those situations, and there has to be a willingness to do this long term. This isn't going to be a 1 or 2 year project, but it's an ongoing dedication to a community over a longer period of time to create structures and processes to make it work.
I think Vision's overall story is a story of how a group of people get together, decide how they're going to divvy up the resources and the money, put their people in key positions, and then utilize those positions to protect the other people around them. Now, unfortunately, it's worked for them. They're still in power. All their people are still in government. They're all winning the elections.
I think the Cambria County Planning Commission is well tied in with the city already, so I don't think it was too much of a jump. I think it's maybe not the same pool, but maybe adjacent pools, because I think the Planning Commission contains people like the Reverend Sylvia, and I remember I had dealings with them before when I was on the Johnstown Planning Commission, and we were trying to stop someone from spot zoning and doing something which was illegal according to our zoning laws. The Cambria County Planning Commission gave their blessing when in black and white in the zoning it was against what should have been done. They kind of already were part of that ancestral pool.
When Ethan was the executive director of the Cambria County Planning Commission, I originally busted him because he had a deal with the county where they paid his health insurance for 3 months while he was working as city manager in Johnstown.
I attended a Cambria County Commissioners meeting, and after he left working for the CCPC, all while working a full-time job as the highest paid city manager the city of Johnstown has ever seen. How many incidents do we need to see happen with you before this commission will act? We've seen the
and I made a big stink because it cost $6,500. It was an example of special favors, but when you have TV Tom as your president commissioner, you see the interconnection. You take care of your own people. So a normal person would start a new job and have to wait 3 months for health insurance. He got it on day 1 because he was connected. Ethan is not a very skilled administrator. There's no nice way of putting it. Ethan spent $1.7 million from our ARPA money on the design plans to one of Vision's people for the Central Park project. $1.7 million. They could have taken that $1.7 million, fixed the gazebo, done some lighting, done some maintenance, done the entire Main Street fix-up, which of course it needed some work. It didn't need $6 to $8 million. And that money could have been used for the neighborhoods.
When we look at change, we find that at least in schools, at high school level, it takes 5 to 7 years for a change to last. Elementary schools, 3 to 4 years. So if you're looking at a city, how many years does something actually have to be moving forward that people can count on it and depend on it, trust it, know about it, look towards it as a way to get information?
They have a lot of dreams, and I think their approach is backwards. Either backwards, or they're just worried about making it more of a play area for the people on the hills that come down and play, and then go home. So they want to spend the millions of dollars that it comes in to help the poor people in the city. They want to spend it on their play area, which doesn't really help the regular citizens of the city of which it's intended. Is Vision itself the problem? I mean, even if they didn't have the name, they would still be a group of people who have the money and power and control. Actually, quite nice that they've given themselves a name and go to meetings where we can isolate them and, target them by calling them Vision. They are arrogant enough to form an LLC or a nonprofit and do that for us, so we don't have to say it's a hidden cabal in a back smoky room. They're just right there. They're doing it in a smoky room, but then advertising. So, I mean, they're quite arrogant because they get away with it.
When you talk about, historically pre-union days. The efforts that were made, really orchestrated efforts to divide people, on cultural lines. I think a lot of that still really exists here. And it's sad because it's a big piece of what's preventing us from moving forward. It is what kept groups fighting against each other from a performance standpoint in the workplace. And now, it's doing the same thing. We have these groups where we've got one really well-performing school district here and one really poorly performing one here. What about, thinking a little differently, rebalancing some resources there?
I'm really empathetic to people who look back on the past and think, oh, that was so much better. Like, we should just go back and do more of that. Like, that's what we know how to do. That's what we're good at. But when you start thinking about the kind of future that your kids and your grandkids are going to inherit, I think it's almost a moral question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we building a community that our kids are going to be proud to inherit?
Now, more than 1 in 3 people in this magical city are living in poverty. Think of it, you politicians. These are stupid people. Believe me, stupid people.
Obviously, I think it's almost an epidemic of overpromising with politics, right?
We are going to bring prosperity back to Johnstown. We're going to bring it back. We're going to bring it back.
As much as there's still talk in Johnstown of we just need some big company to come in, and save the day, it's not going to happen. The way that we need to rebuild communities is to think about where are we going forward.
You need an economy that has people with disposable incomes, of which this area does not. Anybody who wants to look at the economics of this area, that information is readily available. It's not a secret, it's fact. So we are losing population, our people's incomes are decreasing. Now there are people who have decent incomes, and they're primarily the people in control and think everything's great. Well, it's not, but it's another story.
I think at her core, Amy Bradley is not a bad person. I think she's an empty suit who's capitalizing on the fact that she can get a 6-digit salary plus by doing what she's told. That's a harsh criticism to use on her, but the reality of it is, you look at her career when she was working in 1889, when she got the job at the Chamber of Commerce. Under her watch, 500, I believe, businesses have closed in Cambria County. What kind of chamber director is she if they keep closing businesses and she's not addressing the shortfall? What is she doing for $200,000 a year? Where she was on the vision board, she was their PR person. She was the face of vision. And when you realize that she's well put together, she was on the media, she presents well, they were using her to basically calm people down to spread a propaganda agenda. And I think that probably makes her the worst person in vision because she knew what she was doing.
My personal philosophy on community development, because community development is economic development as well as the health and wellness of the community, is to do 2 things: raise the floor and raise the ceiling in conjunction. And raising the ceiling means creating economic vitality and opportunities. You can do that through attracting companies, you can do that through starting companies, but I think our real opportunity is to do that through growing companies that are already here. There are a lot of people that have stable companies. If we could more intelligently help them and combine resources from our higher education, we could start to raise that ceiling. At the same time, we need to raise the floor because of things like poverty and drug issues and housing. We really need to be thoughtful about our community design so that we can impact in positive ways the moving of that floor.
There should be a smart strategic plan around how do we bring those things back to life. It needs to come ahead of the collective realizing their potential, because then you'll see, like has been the case with some other stuff in town, where it all ends up in the hands of the same people and they're controlling those investment opportunities. And I don't mean just people, redevelopment authorities and things like that don't have a broad enough interest. Their focus is too narrow on how can we capture a big industry here. We need to have our minds open, and we need to have the access to infrastructure open enough to groups that are going to start out small. And maybe they'll grow into the next big thing. Maybe they'll grow into an industry. And I think there's some people, there's some groups that are getting a handle on that.
I have enough means to not be in this area, and I like to stay here and have a place that's nice for me and my family. If they had more amenities outside of that one area, more people would buy houses and live here. and then they wouldn't have so many problems.
So I think they put these people in, ask them to do their dirty work, and then they burn them out. Because Johnstown has had, I think, about 10 city managers in the past 12, 13 years. We've had a revolving door in this community that continues. Call it a brain drain. The problem is it's a control by the leadership. They're micromanaging. And that's why when you have a group like Vision sitting in backroom meetings telling government officials how they should run the government, and they're listening to them without public input and without the community aware of it, you have a problem.
They get in their back rooms, and instead of doing government activities out in the public and saying, hey, we can get $30 million for this city, what do you guys want and need of this? They go back and their power brokers all sit in the room and they go, what do we want to do with this money that's for those people? And then they go, you know what? We can build a park. We can do this because we all like to go down on Friday and have dinner at some overpriced restaurant. And then we want a nice park to go to and have splash park. And then they're going to spend $30 million on that. Meanwhile, my neighborhood's falling apart.
We as a governance board can sit there and say, we're very purposefully going to do things. Instead of arbitrarily taking houses down that are in disrepair downtown, we're going to instead take out a block. We're going to take out this block because we're going to put an academic facility there.
I think Vision should be disbanded. I don't think they serve a function in our community. I think they are a very dangerous group of people who think they are well-intended.
And we chose that block because right behind it is another block that we can put new condos down where people can live, and it creates then a stroll district to downtown.
You know, you talk about the evil organization and you kind of make the conspiracy claims. Is that who they are? That's who they appear to be to me.
And we briefed all the elected officials because then we're going to go to them and say, these are our priorities. And when we tell you we have priorities, it's very thoughtful, very deliberate, and it's a means to an end. And all of them are supporting it 100%.
Pays to be a yes man, I guess, as far as I understand. No city manager wants to work here for $135,000 a year because they have to live in the city, and the city's that bad. So now vote for it.
Ask yourself this question: what work is being done on the RAISE grant or on the Central Park project? They appointed a Central Park committee, 20-odd some people. They never met once.
They were the same people doing the same thing, so he was not really brought in from the outside. He was already in the mix and just, you know, hey, you're good, yes man, you do what you're told. Want some more money?